world is collapsing in on itself in real time while we watch, and it's remarkable in a lot of ways, though it's really not if you understand where all of these power grabs and things have come from. Just look at what I mean by the world's folding in on itself. Right now you have the World Economic Forum going on, right? And they've got some of the biggest power players from all over the world at this thing. And I don't know what kind of media you observe, but since I know how to find things, I've seen a lot of clips from this. And I'll tell you, they're already talking like they control the entirety of the world. This is essentially the hubris of the banks, the elite, and certain governments just basically saying, yeah, we know that we are close to what we've been trying to achieve for so long, and fuck you. I mean, they just say it in one way or another over and over again. And I find it interesting also, there was a huge protest outside of there. I can't even tell you how many people. It was a lot of people. Of course, all they did was stand outside and yell, and that kind of protest doesn't work anymore. People are numb to that. Governments don't fucking listen. People don't listen to that. But there were a lot of people out there protesting. I do find it interesting, though, that they keep putting these kinds of things, these kinds of activities, normally where people can't access them at all, but they definitely do them, for example, say during January. In a cold climate, because it's just less likely that they're going to have people. They still managed to have at least a couple thousand people that were near there protesting. I don't think they were right outside. I think they were near there. But imagine how many more it would have been if the weather was better. You know, they orchestrate all this shit. I mean, why do you think that all the shit happened with George Floyd and the riots that ensued after that at the time that they did? Do you think George Floyd's the only person that's ever been mishandled by a cop? Or the only black person that's ever been mishandled by a cop? Or the only time that's ever happened that it's been caught on video? I mean, it was a selected incident. And if you don't know that, it's time to get your head out of your fucking ass. The things that they're doing with this vax is unreal. It's not just with people. I'm not going to talk about that too much. I'm just going to talk more about what they're doing with food too, and how they're trying to put this stuff into animals, and the things that are changing with the way they handle food. It's just, I don't understand how there can be so many people in this world that don't get it. That population control, I don't mean even limiting numbers of people. I mean just keeping people in a docile slave class is the goal. It's so obvious. Terrible fucking food, not promoting exercise. I mean, this has been another big thing the last couple of years. Not promoting exercise. This body positivity bullshit about if you're fat, that's beautiful and that's healthy. That's not, I'm sorry. I'm not mad at you if you're fat, that's your problem. But you're not going to convince me that obesity is natural, determined by genetics, completely irrelevant to how much you exercise or what you eat, and that I have to think anything in particular about that. If somebody's overweight, then that's just fine. It's not fine.
If you diet, you lose weight, right?
The number one cause of obesity is genetics.
What's more, you go to a doctor, doctors used to be more on top of saying things to you on every doctor visit along the lines of get some more exercise, eat better, get more sleep. That's kind of like standard doctor advice. Like if you go to a doctor for anything, the littlest thing, the biggest thing, they should be telling you that at some point, just because doctors should always say that because they should always promote health. They don't even do that anymore. In fact, I've seen these threads of people who go out of their way to search for doctors that don't condemn their obesity because there's actually a lot of those out there. That's negligent. But that's the clown world that we live in now. Electronics have gotten out of control in so many facets that I can't even really talk about it for any length of time without it making the video super long. I mean, everything from the mind control of every different social media app, like TikTok especially. A lot of people are up on TikTok, but it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It just has a lot of shitty content. But China doesn't let their people see the same shitty kind of content as other countries do, and many countries even block the app. So because they don't control the content, that being said, though, I'm saying it's not. A lot of people like to say, well, it's TikTok. It's not just TikTok. It's everything. It's Facebook, Instagram, it's YouTube, it's Snapchat, it's every fucking commercial that's pumped in through a television or a radio or plastered on a billboard. It's everything. All of it is an assault. I call it electronics as a catch-all. It's all an assault on your senses, and it's an attempt to stimulate dopamine, elicit a response. All of this. Dopamine is really a quick dopamine stimulation is really another drug category that gets ignored, kind of like sugar and high fructose corn syrup. I'm just mentioning it because it's another facet of the world just eating itself. It's hard to keep track of everything that I see as evidence of this, especially in trying to keep this video short, because every time I make a video and I try to integrate the clips that I see when I'm referencing them, every time I try to do that, man, my videos get struck down so fast. It's just like, anyway, this clip that I saw of this doctor, and she had just been named the head of some large health organization, talking about obesity is genetic only in people.
That means if you are born to parents that have obesity, you have a 50 to 85% likelihood of having the disease yourself, even with optimal diet, exercise, sleep management, stress management. So when
people can't help it, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. As ridiculous as every aspect of this fucking war. I mean, it used to be where when someone would lie to you, and I'm talking about the government, when they would lie to you, they would try to lie to you a little smarter, and they would space out the distance between the lies, so that if you were at any kind of intelligence, you were paying attention, and any kind of fucking attention span over 30 seconds, they couldn't tell you one thing one week, then literally 7 days later tell you something the complete opposite, and then tell you that's what they said in the first place and you weren't listening. That's the worst kind of fucking, I mean, it's like low quality gaslighting. It's not even trying. And the shit that they're saying in relation to this war, man, we have now escalated to the point where Germany's declared war.
And therefore, I've said already in the last days, yes, we have to do more to defend Ukraine. Yes, we have to do more also on tanks. But the most important and the crucial part is that we do it together and that we do not do the blame game in Europe, because we are fighting a war against Russia and not against each other.
The United States has committed everything except for a large number of troops. There's still some troops there. There's a ton of equipment there. Fuck, a ton of our money is gone. It's there. There's no problems in this country that need to be fixed. It's just send fucking money. I'm not one of them pro-Russian shills either, but it doesn't seem like this war is really to do anything except to get a lot of people killed. I mean, what exactly are they trying to prevent? I don't really believe that Putin's in any kind of mindset to try to take the whole of Europe. I don't believe that that's accurate at all. And I know how governments like to lie about what leaders are doing so they can justify war. I've seen it a couple times in my lifetime, and I've learned about a lot of it from previous wars, especially World War II. I'd like you to just ask yourself, if you're all fucking pro-war, why? What exactly do we gain out of this war? What exactly do we prevent out of this war? Because, here, I'll give you another example, just jumping in a different direction. I'm watching this movie, The Watchmen. I've never seen it before. It came out about 10 years ago, right? And it's about superheroes and stuff, and there's one scene where they're looking at the doomsday clock, right? And they're like, the doomsday clock is now set at 15 minutes to midnight. And this is like 10 years ago, and this is a scenario which is supposed to, for the effect of the movie, give you the implication like, oh shit, it's getting really serious in this movie because the doomsday clock is down to like 15 minutes to midnight, right? We're talking about nuclear war. The actual doomsday clock as of yesterday is at 90 seconds to midnight.
Largely, though not exclusively, because of the mounting dangers in the war in Ukraine. We moved the clock forward the closest it has ever been to midnight. It is now 90 seconds to midnight.
Even in a dystopian fantasy, part sci-fi, part action film from just a decade ago, the thought of being at 15 minutes to midnight was supposed to be enough to, heighten your emotions while you're watching this and make you get the sense that something serious is going to happen. And now the real clock is at 90 seconds. Well, why is it like that? Because we're fucking pushing Russia. Why? Because we don't want them to invade Ukraine? Okay, I don't agree with that. But at the same time, though, what does that really have to do with us? Russia's been fucking Ukraine for 100 years. Why do we care now? They've been fucking them since the Holodomor. So why do we care now? Why does this country care now? What's their real goal? And Ukraine, that election, when Zelensky got elected in the first place, ton of scandal. He imprisoned his rival. And then we had what happened here happen. Then we see the same kind of thing happen in Brazil. Bolsonaro flees the country. Every single person in the country is like, I didn't fucking vote for this guy. I voted for Bolsonaro. But everybody's, oh, there was nothing wrong there. Do elections even matter anymore? I bet you if you ask those people at the World Economic Forum, they'll tell you that they don't. Not really. Just like a few of the people there were commenting on how they are going to, these are not Americans, how they are going to influence the changing of certain laws in America because that's how they want it. They said that on camera, like in front of a crowd. Like they weren't ashamed or they let it blurt out like accidentally. They're like, yeah, this is just how it's going to be. You'll see. This world is fucking folding in on itself. And there are so many examples. What amazes me, though, is the exponential rate. Because, like I said, I understand why it's happening because I understand the source. I understand how this shit started. And I understand what they're doing. It's just a power grab. They want everything. They don't just want control of the media or just the money, like by the banks. They want control of all the money. The banks aren't enough. Even the governments aren't enough. They want everything. Every form of communication. They want every form of recreation. Every form of a consumable. Anything that they can make a commodity or a consumable. Like I was saying before with carbon, right? Did I explain that to you about BP? No, I didn't tell you that. So this whole carbon footprint thing and the fact that there's a tax on that and that's a measurable thing, that's not real. Okay, you understand that, right? That was part of an ad campaign by, I believe, BP in like the 1990s because they had some horrendous environmental fucking catastrophes that they caused and they wanted to divert attention. And then that idea was stolen and repurposed or borrowed and repurposed as weaponized words. And that's another thing, another indicator. Weaponized words, they're everywhere. And it's getting to the point where weaponized words are more important than whatever the original conversation is about. Whatever the thought is, the idea, the discussion, the way that you use your weaponized words become more important than the actual facts. Carbon footprint, they managed to find a way to try to commoditize, make into a commodity carbon, right? If they could figure out a way to do that with water and air, it will fucking happen and we will have to pay to breathe. And if you don't believe me, they are already talking about ways to privatize all water. It's coming. It's coming if it's not stopped. But that's just my point. every single fucking thing will be turned into a commodity. Something that can be rented, something that can be sold, something that can be controlled, something that will be turned into a data point to be data mined by all the companies, etc., etc. And these weaponized words, they're becoming, just like all advertising, they're becoming so, they're what's left of people's attention span after all of this, as I said, electronic interference, advertising, what's left of their attention span is being destroyed by weaponized words like gender. That's a weaponized word. That's not a real word. You understand that, right? Sex is a real word. Biological sex is a real thing. Male or female, maybe you can make an argument for there's actually a third biological sex for hermaphrodite, right? Very rare, but it occurs in humans. And there's maybe one or two more in nature because of the amoebus organisms. But essentially, there's two biological sexes. How many genders are there? Well, the truth is there's an unlimited amount of genders. That's not a lie. See, that in itself, that's not a lie, because gender is a made-up word. And if you want to understand its origins, search for Dr. John Money. And that was another word that was just turned into a political weapon, just like the word racist. It's not a real word. It comes from the word racialist, which means to be racially aware, which just means to be able to observe things in your environment. Racist itself, that's another weaponized word, and it's used quite frequently. There's a lot more than that. And there's some that are even more ridiculous, where they're just, and I don't want to go over all of them, and go through Twitter or Reddit. You'll see a ton of them. The point is that these words have now become more important than the conversation that they were originated from. And that shit's distracting and wears you down and making you weary, giving you shitty food, telling you obesity is good, never stressing exercise or calling exercise, some kind of patriarchal supremacist viewpoint like they do with everything. These are weaponized words, and these are all demoralizing tactics. You know who Yuri Bezmenov is? I would love to put Yuri Bezmenov's a section of his thing up in here, but the thing is, it's like an hour, 2 hours long. I don't know if it would make it. Well, anyways, he was a KGB agent that defected in the late 70s, maybe, and he was actually a Canadian resident, but he did some interviews with whoever the big guy was at the time, Mike Wallace or something, and he did this one interview where he talked about how you take over a country, and he talked about everything, but he talked specifically for a very good definition of demoralization. This country's past the point of demoralization. However, more demoralization, even though it's really no longer necessary, continues to get heaped up upon everything else just to further break people down. And that's what weaponized words do. It's because the world is folding in on itself. It's just, all I can say about, I'm done now. All I can say about this is something has to be done. Something has to be done. Standing in the streets and bitching about it doesn't seem to work. Voting doesn't seem to work. Trying to contact, to use a more American example, trying to contact a representative of any fucking caliber and have a conversation where you actually can get your point across, where they listen to you, doesn't seem to work. It's just amazing, isn't it, how every single person who is elected, I mean, maybe if you go to a really, really small local level, but even stuff like school boards, they don't listen. They want to bring something up into the school curriculum, and they'll have 100 parents show up and say no, and maybe they have none going the other way saying yes, we agree, or maybe they have 10 or 15, and they got 100, 200 that say no. They still don't listen. You can't get them to listen. How do you think you're going to get a congressman or a senator on the state level or the federal level to listen? You can't get, how many people need to show up and say, hey, we disagree? They don't listen. It's just amazing how all these people, they run for these offices, and it doesn't matter what the fuck they say. It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle they're on. They don't give a fuck about anything. Or maybe they're all getting fucking blackmailed or bullied or threatened when they get into office, and maybe that's why, but it doesn't matter. The point is, it doesn't fucking work. We need a new solution. We need a third position.